Persona 5 Royal is a game that is full of things I didn't expect. The most surprising thing of all being that it not only made me like Akechi, but think he's one of the best characters in the game, or maybe even in this series. I've got a real thing for angry poor decision machine characters, as anyone in tune with my recent addiction to She-Ra understands. In this video I will touch on the other aspects of P5R's as they do tie directly into Akechi, but the main focus here is the man himself, and his incredible transformation from kinda bland with a lot of potential antagonist, to an incredible rival character with a believable connection. Oh, and spoilers, obviously. Goro Akechi is a fucking fantastic character in Royal. In Vanilla P5 he gets done kinda dirty with a fairly weak attempt at redemption through self-sacrifice, but this really falls flat, and is otherwise pretty disappointing, considering how much of him is left unexplored. The anime did a slightly better job of this, but we don't talk about that. Royal, however, takes Akechi and runs with him. His surprise return at the point where Joker would normally be detained by Sai isn't handled very gracefully, but it's fine. Akechi is alive, and that's okay. The story can now continue on. And the best parts of Akechi are yet to come. Akechi's confidant has been reimagined in Royal, now being an optional part of the main game rather than an automatic confidant that levels up through the later stages, and thank God for this. Akechi's eerie civility, given that we know what his deal is, especially if you've played the game before, is deliciously discomforting. You can practically hear him gritting his teeth in some lines.
I guess you can call it my detective's intuition.
His confidant has no interest in portraying a wholesome friendship or potential romance between the two. Sorry, Twitter. But instead gives a lot more context to Akechi's deep-seated insecurity when it comes to how he compares with Joker. As he says in rank 8 of his confidant, Akechi hates Joker for being almost as good as he is seemingly at everything. And this fuels a much more believable rivalry than in Vanilla, where Akechi was more of a nuisance than anything else. You duel him during his confidant, after which he throws down a gauntlet, quite literally, and demands you promise him a rematch once he can show his full power, as he's obviously still giving the illusion of the righteous detective at this stage. Loki can't come out just yet, so it's more him testing the waters. This then pretty much ends his confidant until Shido's palace, where you remind him of the promise you made to keep being rivals, thus solidifying his bond with you and achieving the maximum rank. Once it's revealed that Akechi is alive, and he speaks to you in his mask-off, barely contained resentment tone, we really get to see what his deal is. Now that he's no longer acting the part of the nice soft boy detective, we get to finally spend time with Goro Akechi as he is, rather than as he pretends to be for the sake of a facade. It's in these interactions that we learn a lot more about him and how his relationship with Joker has changed since he threw the gauntlet. We get a much deeper insight into his personality here. He comes across as incredibly cold and self-serving, aside from his obvious hatred and propensity for violence in the metaverse, but it's in what is not said that's really the most telling. One thing we very rarely get from Akechi is a sense that he's let his guard down. Even in normal conversations, such as taking him out to the jazz club, his attitude is severe, and his language rarely implies an emotional connection to anything, and yet he never refuses the player at any point. It's him who seeks you out as soon as he realizes things are amiss. One of his first lines in the third semester is,
"We have greater concerns right now. In fact, I'm a bit offended you think so little of me that you expected me to be dead."
If this was anyone else, he wouldn't give a single shit what they thought, but it's his rival, the one person he wants to surpass and be recognized as better by. So it kind of irritates him. It's a tiny, incidental line, but it also does imply a lot about how Akechi feels about Joker. The fact Joker's opinion matters to Akechi at all is astronomical for this character. You strike up a partnership with Akechi, one offered with his creepy little smirk, and you move on and start investigating what the Christ hell's going on here. You meet up with Yoshizawa, currently still going by Kasumi, and his tone changes to be more polite. I suppose he doesn't feel completely comfortable letting others know of his true disposition besides Joker, since the polite detective facade gives him an extra layer of protection from other people. He's not fully Detective Prince here, but he sounds a lot less like a coiled snake than he did in the previous scene. This immediately reverts when Kasumi questions him about his metaverse clothes. After this, Akechi sounds more free than ever. His lines are practically spat out, and they're red with enough venom to kill an elephant. After all the plot-relevant stuff occurs and the Phantom Thieves are back in action, time is spent with Akechi is interesting to say the least. Joker has already fought alongside and against Akechi several times by this point. We know what capacity he has to be violent and cruel. Despite this, if Joker continually spends time with him, we start to see some cracks appearing, as if we're peering through another mask. In P5 Vanilla, the violent and cruel Akechi is all that's left once the Detective Prince is broken down. We get a glimpse that maybe he could atone, but then we get a pretty dull self-sacrifice redemption, and that's kind of where it ends, which really does him pretty dirty. In Royal, however, there's more left to him. There's even more to Akechi behind the violence and the hate. Loki is but another mask he wears. The only person he would dare imply that to is, of course, the one person he actually shares a real connection with: Joker. The jazz club is probably one of the more important parts of this aspect, as it's a place where Akechi feels safe. He even admits it's his go-to location, a place he has a real connection to, spending time in the one place Akechi actually likes to be, with the one person he wishes he could surpass, leads to some real good unlocking of Akechi. We see him as unguarded as we've ever seen him in these scenes, and it's just through casual conversation. Most of his language is still, as I said earlier, pointed, deflective, and even vague and aloof, but there are tiny sentences he says that really put a pin on how he's starting to genuinely enjoy Joker being around, as much as he has the capacity to anyway. This aspect of Akechi is heartbreaking. It's the tiniest taste of what he could have had with Joker had they met earlier, a life of friendship, connection, and maybe even love. Of course, it can't last, and the real world always catches back up. Akechi during the third semester is defined by this tragedy. We've seen through both of his facades, and now we're left with only the bare emotion underneath. There's a lot Akechi has to display here. To Akechi, there's three main negative emotional states I think really play a central role in his third semester development: resentment, competition, and self-hatred. That's not me saying competition is an inherently negative state to be in, but in Akechi's case it ties pretty heavily into his resentment. He really hates the fact that Joker is able to surpass him at all, and as a result will take any opportunity to compete with him, just to avoid losing. As the third semester reaches its deadline, we make a very significant discovery. Akechi is dead, brought back to life only because Maruki's reality allows it. Destroying Maruki's reality means that Akechi will disappear, and never get the chance to have that life he gets a mere taste of in the jazz club. Akechi recognized this, and he knows it before we do, and yet he continues to work with Joker to take down Maruki. He has a good reason. A life lived under the thumb of another is not a life Akechi would want, but there's also something else. Before Akechi's third awakening, he comes to LeBlanc and eavesdrops on Joker's conversation with Maruki. Maruki knows he's there, of course, and beckons him to come out. This is where Joker learns that Goro Akechi is, in the true reality, most likely dead. Maruki dangles this fact in front of you right before the deadline, a final gambit to beg you to reconsider, and Akechi says this:
Don't tell me you think dangling my life before us is going to have any impact on our decision.
Then, after Maruki leaves, he says this:
Or are you really so spineless that you'd fold over some bullshit trivial threat on my life?
Akechi hates himself. These are the words of someone who views their own life as a bargaining chip that they don't even value. But that's not even the most revealing thing. He insists time and time again that he would rather die than live in this reality, and honestly, I believe him. That doesn't mean he has no desire to live at all. If you insist that no, this isn't trivial, he asks Joker if he thinks he'd be happy to be shown mercy now of all times, and he says that he doesn't want to be pitied. This isn't something I'm debating with you. This is all three of these negative states at once. Resentment, he resents Maruki for taking away his agency out of pity, offering him a happy life he didn't ask for nor want given to him. He wants to live in spite of the world, in spite of other people, not because of them. Competition, if Joker helps him now, it would mean that Joker has finally surpassed him, not by beating him, but by saving him. This puts him in second place forever, as Akechi will live knowing that in this moment he needs Joker to survive. Self-hatred. If he is shown pity now, it confirms everything he fears about himself. That he isn't special, he isn't self-reliant, and he can't make it on his own. Someone else will have saved him. And Akechi can't accept that, because that's the thing he hates himself for the most. Needing someone else. If you tell him that you wish to accept the offer, he will spit a venomous "Are you serious?" at Joker. If you press on, telling him you are indeed serious, a cut-in we rarely see appears. Akechi looks, for an instant, vulnerable. There are 100 ways to interpret this, but I go with him realizing that Joker cares about him so much he wouldn't even risk him to save reality. We don't see what happens after this. We instead hard cut to Maruki's reality, where all of the Phantom Thieves, Yoshizawa now living fully as Kasumi, and Akechi are hanging out in LeBlanc having a good time. Akechi no longer speaks with a dagger for a tongue, reverting back to his sincere and polite tone, and it's unsettling as hell. In the last credit sequence, we see a picture of everyone in LeBlanc having fun. The only two people looking directly at the camera, and by extension the player, are Joker and Akechi. This is where it goes even deeper. You'd expect Akechi to hate Joker if he knew what he did, but this implies that Akechi and Joker are both aware that the reality is false, looking through the window to the real world. If Akechi is aware, why isn't he outraged? Why is he even there? Again, it's up to interpretation, but here's my take. I think that deep down, Goro Akechi really wants to live, and he wants it to be with Joker. If you tell Akechi you're going to take down Maruki, he smiles with enough smugness to rival a cat, and says he's glad to hear it. And after a few more words, he reawakens to his third persona, Heraldwood. This is my piece of evidence that Goro Akechi, if he could live, wants to live with Joker. Because everyone else awakens to their third persona in their bedrooms at home, where their heart truly lives. Goro Akechi's third awakening happens in LeBlanc, with Joker. Akechi's home is where Joker is, wherever that may be, and in the end it's what he wants. Recontextualizing his motivations completely, I think it becomes clear that even though Goro Akechi does deep down want to live, he's willing to give that up, so that Joker and his friends can live their lives on their own terms, and finally be free to grow and thrive. A fate he believes he doesn't even deserve for himself. The fact Goro Akechi not only is willing to die so that one person he can connect with can actually live in freedom, but he actually does, makes his story one of pure tragedy. Absolutely nothing goes right for Akechi during his life. He gets controlled and manipulated by people all of the time, turning him into a killer and making him feel absolutely and utterly alone. Akechi never really had a choice until he finally connected with Joker. And the only choice he makes is the choice to die for him, so that Joker can finally bring justice. Not only does he make this choice once, but given a second chance at life, he chooses it again, this time with even more determination and unwavering vigor represented by his third awakening. Joker reflects on Akechi if you go to the jazz club during the farewell sequence. He carries around Akechi's glove in his pocket, representing the promise that they made to each other. And as he says, his fight with Akechi isn't over yet. He has to live freely and never bow to anyone, just as Akechi would. Some would take this as a reference to Akechi actually still being alive in this reality, but until we get some more concrete evidence of that, I think we can safely assume he's dead. Right? Anyway, with our final thoughts being with Akechi and how his anger and self-hate driven tragedy make him one of the best characters in this game and maybe even in the series, we end on the credits sequence showing off all the Phantom Thieves living their best lives. Always connected to each other, always looking up at the same stars no matter how far apart they are. And it's because Akechi gave that to them. We also get this cute epilogue of Joker and Morgana on the train, getting comfy in their train seat, and... Wait just a goddamn... That jacket, that... Oh, you son of a... Hey everyone, thank you very much for watching my first ever YouTube video essay. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, and all of the other stuff that YouTubers are supposed to say at the end of videos. You can also follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/MaxPoetic. That is my most frequent content platform. If you want more of me, I am over there usually. You can also follow me on Twitter. The links for those are all in the description below. Thank you very much for watching.